On Stoicism Breath, have you ever stopped and noticed something strange? Some people seem to grow quietly, almost invisibly, while others stay stuck, repeating the same frustrations, chasing the same approval, and never quite breaking through. And it's not because they lack talent or opportunity. It's because they're focused on the wrong things. Most people believe transformation comes from being louder, more visible, more impressive. But the truth is, real change doesn't happen in front of an audience. It happens in silence. It happens in those early mornings when no one is watching. In the small, disciplined decisions that don't get applause. In the quiet moments where you choose growth over comfort, focus over distraction. That's where you begin to rewire yourself from the inside out. And this is exactly where Stoicism becomes powerful, not because it teaches you how to perform, but because it teaches you how to build something within you that the world cannot shake. The people who truly transform their lives understand something most others miss. They don't feel the need to explain every move they make. They're not constantly trying to prove themselves, win arguments, or create the perfect image. While others are busy seeking validation, they are building. Quietly. Consistently. Relentlessly. There's a calm certainty in the way they move, a confidence that doesn't come from recognition, but from alignment with their own path. And here's the paradox. The less they talk about what they're doing, the more powerful they seem. There's something magnetic about people who operate this way. You can feel it when you're around them. They don't need to say much, yet their presence speaks volumes. There's clarity in their focus, stillness in their energy, and strength in their silence. And none of it comes from trying to impress anyone. It comes from doing the work. As Plato once said, wise people speak because they have something to say, while others speak because they feel the need to say something. And that's the difference. It's not about staying silent for the sake of silence. It's about making sure that when you do speak, it comes from substance, not noise. But silence, real silence, is often misunderstood. People think it's passive, like you're holding back or avoiding something. But true silence is not empty. It's full. It's intentional. It's where your awareness sharpens, where your thoughts begin to settle, where your energy stops scattering and starts gathering. It's where clarity begins to form. When you step away from constant stimulation, notifications, opinions, endless scrolling, your mind doesn't shut down. It actually begins to function the way it was meant to. It slows down, reorganizes, and starts to process things more deeply. And in that stillness, something incredible happens. You begin to see yourself clearly. The confusion fades. The mental fog lifts. And slowly, the direction you've been searching for starts to reveal itself. Not because someone told you what to do, but because you finally gave yourself the space to listen. Carl Jung captured this perfectly when he said that those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken. And that awakening isn't always comfortable. Because in silence, you don't just find clarity, you find truth. You begin to notice the patterns in your thinking, the stories you've been telling yourself, the fears you've been avoiding, the doubts you've been burying under distraction. And this is exactly why so many people avoid silence. Because silence is honest. It doesn't let you hide. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you've been trying to escape. And instead of facing that discomfort, most people reach for distraction. They check their phone. They open another tab. They get pulled into arguments or noise. Anything to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But avoidance comes at a cost. What you avoid doesn't disappear. It sinks deeper. It builds up quietly, draining your energy, clouding your thinking, fragmenting your focus. And over time, you start to feel it. That sense of exhaustion without doing much. That feeling of being busy but not moving forward. That lack of clarity when making decisions. That's the weight of everything you haven't faced. And the only way through it is not more noise, but more awareness. More stillness. More silence. Because in the end, silence is not where you lose yourself. It's where you finally find who you really are. On Stoicism Breath, there comes a moment when you start asking yourself a difficult question. Why do I feel so exhausted, even when I haven't done anything meaningful? Why do I feel busy all day, yet stuck in the same place? And the answer isn't always obvious. It's not just physical effort. It's mental weight. It's the accumulation of unprocessed thoughts, unresolved tension, and constant distraction slowly draining your energy from the inside out. Because every time your attention is pulled in a different direction, messages, headlines, arguments, opinions, you are spending energy. Not in one big moment, but in hundreds of small fragments. And over time, that fragmentation adds up. It leaves you feeling scattered instead of focused, overwhelmed instead of productive. You're not tired because you worked hard. You're tired because your attention was everywhere. So why do we keep choosing this noise? Because somewhere along the way, we were taught that being seen equals being valuable. That the more attention we get, the more important we are. But long before social media existed, Aristotle warned against this mindset. He understood that true value doesn't come from attention, it comes from awareness, from reflection, from the ability to think deeply instead of reacting constantly. And when you're always chasing attention, your mind never gets that chance. It stays on edge, jumping from one stimulus to the next, always reacting, never reflecting. And that's where the real cost begins. Because when you're constantly reacting, you're not thinking clearly. You're not grounded. You're not making decisions from a place of strength. You're simply responding to whatever appears in front of you. But imagine a different approach. Imagine if you stopped reacting to everything. If you stopped feeling the need to explain yourself, to respond to every opinion, to prove your point. What if instead, you observed more than you spoke? What if you acted more than you posted? Immediately something shifts. You begin to reclaim your energy. The mental bandwidth that was being drained by countless small distractions starts returning to you. And with that energy, you gain something powerful, focus. Now you can invest that focus into something meaningful. Into mastering a skill, building a project, improving your health, strengthening your mind. You stop living for appearance and start living in alignment. Because there's a difference between a life that looks good and a life that actually feels right. As Socrates said, a life that is not examined is not worth living. And that kind of examination doesn't happen in noise. It happens in silence, in stillness, in those moments where you are not influenced by trends, opinions, or applause, but guided by honest reflection. And here's the truth most people overlook. Your brain is not built to handle constant input. It's not designed to process thousands of opinions, comparisons, and reactions every day. It's designed for focus, for clarity, for deliberate thinking. But when it's overwhelmed by gossip, by endless scrolling, by unnecessary drama, it starts to break down. You stop thinking clearly. You lose your sense of direction. You no longer feel grounded. And more importantly, you lose your intuition. That inner voice that once helped you make confident decisions becomes quiet. And without clarity, something dangerous happens. You stop trusting yourself. You begin to hesitate. You second-guess your choices. You look outward for answers instead of inward. And over time, that loss of trust becomes more damaging than any single mistake. Because without clarity, you don't move forward with confidence. You move cautiously, uncertainly, constantly questioning yourself. But what if you chose differently? What if you took your attention back? What if instead of letting the world define you, you turned inward and built your identity based on self-awareness, not external validation? Imagine the kind of person you could become if your progress didn't need to be loud. If you simply did the work, quietly, patiently, and let the results speak for themselves. Think about your own day. How often do you lose time, not because something important demanded it, but because something trivial distracted you? A notification. A headline. A meaningless conversation that lingers in your mind long after it should. And before you realize it, hours are gone. Not invested, scattered. And that's the difference. A focused mind spends time with intention. A distracted mind loses it in pieces. It's like 1,000 tiny cuts. None of them seem significant on their own, but together, they drain your energy, your clarity, your momentum. And that exhaustion you feel? It's real. Not just emotionally, but neurologically. Your brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for focus, planning, and decision-making. It thrives in clarity. It performs best when distractions are minimal and attention is directed. But when it's constantly interrupted, constantly pulled in different directions, it loses efficiency. It becomes slower, less precise, less effective. But when you give it silence, real silence, it resets. It recalibrates. It begins to function the way it was meant to. And out of that silence, something begins to emerge. Control. Not control over others. Not control through force or suppression, but self-control. The ability to choose your focus. The ability to decide what deserves your attention and what doesn't. The ability to act with intention instead of reacting by default. And that kind of control doesn't come from doing more. It comes from choosing less. Less noise. Less distraction. Less reaction. And in that space, you begin to take your life back. On Stoicism Breath, real control is not about dominating others or forcing outcomes. It's something far deeper. Control is self-mastery. It's the moment your actions align with your values, even when no one is watching, even when there's no reward, no applause, no recognition. It's choosing not to react when everything inside you wants to respond. It's choosing not to prove yourself when your ego demands validation. It's choosing not to perform for the world, but to stay grounded in who you are. Aristotle once said that what lies in our power to do also lies in our power not to do. And that simple idea changes everything. Because true power is not in action alone, it's in restraint. It's in the ability to pause, to think, to choose. And that power lives in a specific part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. The part responsible for focus, planning, discipline. Not the impulsive system that pushes you to scroll, argue, compare, and react, but the higher system that allows you to commit, to stay consistent, to follow through. Here's where psychology and philosophy meet in a powerful truth. Your identity is not shaped by what you say about yourself. It's shaped by what you repeatedly do. You can tell people you're disciplined, focused, driven, but if your daily actions don't reflect that, your brain knows the truth. And over time, that truth becomes your identity. Carl Jung said it clearly. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. And this isn't just philosophy, it's biology. Every action you repeat strengthens certain neural pathways. When you wake up early, when you choose to exercise, when you resist distractions, your brain physically rewires itself. You're not just acting differently, you're becoming someone different at a neurological level. But what about motivation? Isn't that what most people rely on? Here's what many don't realize. Real motivation doesn't come from outside. It's not built on praise, likes, or approval. It's built inside your brain. It's driven by progress. Dopamine, the chemical that fuels motivation, doesn't spike when someone compliments you. It activates when you see yourself improving, when you finish what you started, when you push a little further, when you keep a promise to yourself. And the most powerful part? This process works best in silence. It happens in those invisible moments. The early morning when you choose discipline over comfort. The quiet decision to eat better, to work instead of scroll, to stay focused when no one is watching. That's when your brain rewards you. That's when real change begins. So why do so many people rush to announce their goals before they even begin? I'm going to get in shape. I'm writing a book. I'm building something big. It feels good to say it. It gives you a sense of progress. But neuroscience shows something surprising. When you share your goals too early, your brain releases dopamine as if you've already achieved them. You get the reward without doing the work. And that false reward can weaken your drive to actually follow through. Plato once warned that the beginning is the most important part of any work. But if you spend your energy talking about the beginning instead of living it, you never move forward. You stay stuck in intention, never reaching execution. This is why premature celebration becomes the enemy of discipline. When you confuse talking with doing, you trick your mind. You build an identity based on perception, not performance. And when the attention fades, you're left with nothing solid, no system, no habits, no real progress. So what's the alternative? Say less. Do more. Let your actions speak. Let your consistency build your identity. Let silence become the place where your transformation is forged. Not because you told the world who you are becoming, but because you quietly became it. Real change doesn't come from declarations. It doesn't come from perfectly crafted posts or public commitments. It comes from your daily systems. The small decisions you repeat over and over again. Waking up at the same time. Showing up to your workout without needing accountability. Opening the book. Sitting down to work. Choosing focus over distraction. And as you repeat these actions, something powerful happens. Your brain rewires itself. New pathways form. Discipline becomes natural. Focus becomes easier. And over time, the person you once tried to be becomes the person you are. But here's the truth most people don't see. Growth is invisible. It happens in the early mornings no one sees. In the late nights when you keep going. In the quiet moments when you choose to try again instead of quitting. The world celebrates results, but it rarely sees the process that created them. And that's where things get uncomfortable, because real growth doesn't just change your habits. It changes you. It separates you from your old identity, from old patterns, from the version of yourself that others are used to. And when that shift begins, not everyone around you will understand it. Friends, family, coworkers, they may question you. Not always out of negativity, but out of discomfort. Because your change forces them to confront their own lack of change. It challenges the image they've always had of you. And this is where your strength is tested. Can you stay silent when others doubt you? Can you keep going without needing approval? Can you continue building, even when no one understands what you're doing? Because if you can, something rare begins to form within you. A kind of resilience that doesn't depend on external support. A quiet confidence rooted in action, not validation. And that is where real transformation begins. On Stoicism Breath, Carl Jung once shared a powerful truth. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that for a moment. How many decisions, reactions, and patterns in your life feel automatic, almost like they're happening to you instead of being chosen by you? That's not coincidence. That's the unseen part of your mind quietly running the show. And here's where silence becomes transformative. Because when you step into real silence, not just the absence of noise, but the presence of awareness, something begins to rise. Thoughts you've avoided. Emotions you've buried. Doubts you've been distracting yourself from. They all surface. And in that moment, you face a choice. You can either escape again, scroll, distract, numb, or you can stay and engage. And that engagement is where growth truly begins. It's uncomfortable, no question. But it's also where emotional strength is built. So how do you train yourself to handle that discomfort without shutting down or reacting impulsively? You stay in it just a little longer than you want to. You resist the urge to immediately respond, to defend your ego, to chase quick validation. And every time you do that, something remarkable happens. You begin to rewire your brain. You're teaching it a new pattern. Instead of choosing performance, it learns to choose purpose. Instead of reacting instantly, it learns to pause, assess, and act with intention. That's not just discipline. That's transformation at a neurological level. Socrates once said that the greatest way to live with honor is to become what you claim to be. And that's exactly what this practice leads to. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you close the gap between who you say you are and who you actually are. You begin to embody the traits you once admired: focus, discipline, clarity, not for appearance, but because they are becoming part of you. And let's be honest, this process is not clean or easy. Some days you'll feel strong, clear, in control. Other days, it will feel like you're slipping back, like nothing is working. But that's part of the process. Because over time, even when it doesn't feel obvious, your mind is changing. The space between stimulus and response begins to grow. You no longer react instantly. You begin to choose. And in that space, something powerful replaces the old habits. The need for constant recognition starts to fade. The urge to prove yourself weakens. And what takes its place is something far more stable: a quiet confidence. A deep sense of knowing. Not loud, not performative, but grounded in self-respect. Imagine waking up each day with that feeling. Knowing exactly what you're building. Knowing who you're becoming. Knowing why you're doing it. No noise pulling you into comparison. No pressure to be understood. Just clarity. Direction. Purpose. That kind of clarity doesn't come from attention. It doesn't come from applause or external validation. It's built slowly, in silence, often in solitude. It's built through consistency, through showing up for yourself again and again, even when no one else sees it. And when that alignment begins to happen, when your actions match your values day after day, something shifts internally. You no longer need someone to tell you you're doing well. You feel it. You know it. So why is this so rare? Because most people are trained to chase visibility instead of mastery. To announce effort instead of embodying it. To seek recognition instead of building identity. But both neuroscience and philosophy point to the same truth: your brain doesn't form identity based on what you say. It forms identity based on what you repeatedly do. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, discipline, and long-term focus, doesn't respond to declarations. It responds to behavior. You can say you're focused, but if your actions are chaotic, your brain detects the contradiction. And that creates internal tension, a kind of cognitive dissonance that slowly drains your motivation. But when your actions consistently align with your goals, even in silence, something different happens. Your brain begins to recognize patterns. It sees repetition. It senses commitment. And over time, your identity stabilizes around those behaviors. And this is where real motivation is born. Not from praise. Not from approval. But from integrity. From keeping your word to yourself. From seeing your own progress. From finishing what you started. And when that transformation takes root, your priorities begin to change. You stop craving attention. You stop chasing validation. Instead, you start craving progress. You choose consistency over spectacle. Discipline over distraction. Your brain adapts as well. The dopamine that once spiked from notifications or external rewards begins to shift. Now it responds to something deeper: the quiet satisfaction of doing the work, of showing up, of moving forward. And that's when you realize something profound. The most powerful victories in your life will never be seen by the world, but they will be felt by you, every single day. On Stoicism Breath, real growth begins the moment you stop waiting for someone to watch you. It begins when you push through resistance, not because you'll be praised, but because you've decided to hold yourself to a higher standard. When no one is there to clap, no one is there to judge, and yet you still show up, that's where transformation becomes real. Plato once said that the greatest victory is conquering yourself. And that victory doesn't happen in front of an audience. It happens quietly, in discipline, in consistency, in the moments no one sees. If you think about the people you truly respect, you'll notice something. They rarely explain themselves. They don't feel the need to justify every decision or narrate every step of their journey. They let the work speak. Their focus is sharp. Their discipline is visible, not because they talk about it, but because it shows up in their results. And that's not just confidence, that's clarity. A deep understanding of what matters and what doesn't. And clarity, more than anything else, is what allows them to move forward without distraction. So why do they choose silence? Because silence protects something most people give away too easily: mental bandwidth. Every time you argue to defend your choices, you spend energy. Every time you try to explain your vision to someone who doesn't understand it, you dilute your focus. You take something clear and make it uncertain. But silence preserves that clarity. It creates space for thinking, for refining, for building. It's not withdrawal. It's protection. It's the environment where your best ideas grow, uninterrupted and undistorted. Aristotle believed that excellence is not something you do once. It's something you repeat. A habit. And habits are not formed in big, dramatic moments. They are formed in quiet repetition. In the small decisions you make daily. In the discipline that never gets posted, never gets noticed. It's built in the hours where nothing exciting seems to happen. Where you repeat the same actions again and again, without immediate reward. And over time, that repetition compounds. What once felt difficult becomes natural. What once required effort becomes identity. And that's where real power comes from. Because when your actions turn into habits, and your habits turn into identity, you build something that cannot be taken away. Not because the world gave it to you, but because you created it yourself. This is why transformation is often misunderstood. People think it's a breakthrough moment. A sudden change. A burst of motivation that flips everything overnight. But real transformation is not dramatic. It's not loud. It's a system. It's daily. It's repetitive. And yes, most of the time, it's boring. But that's exactly where its strength lies. Because while motivation fades, systems remain. You might feel inspired today, set a goal, take action, but tomorrow, that feeling may disappear. Life gets busy. Emotions shift. And without structure, everything falls apart. But when you build systems, when you wake up at the same time, train your body consistently, eat with intention, remove distractions, you stop relying on how you feel. You start relying on what you do. And that changes everything. Because rhythm is stronger than motivation. Structure is stronger than emotion. When your life is built on systems, you don't need to constantly push yourself. You simply follow the path you've already created. Without that structure, your mind becomes unstable. It drifts. It reacts. Your emotions begin to dictate your behavior. And that leads to inconsistency, which is the enemy of identity. Because identity is not built from occasional effort. It's built from repeated action. As Aristotle said, we become what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not a single act. It's a habit. You don't become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by practicing it, over and over again, one choice at a time. And that's the shift most people never make. They chase big goals, but ignore small actions. They wait for motivation, but avoid building structure. They talk about change, but resist repetition. But the truth is simple. Your future is not built on what you intend to do. It's built on what you do, consistently, quietly, every single day. On Stoicism Breath, this is where everything becomes real. Because without structure, your mind doesn't stay still, it drifts. It follows emotion, impulse, distraction. One moment you feel motivated, the next you don't. And when your actions depend on how you feel, inconsistency becomes inevitable. And inconsistency quietly destroys identity. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Not what we think about, not what we intend, but what we actually do, over and over again. Excellence is not a moment. It's not a burst of effort. It's a habit. And habits are built one action at a time. So if you want to become someone disciplined, focused, resilient, you don't start with big declarations. You start with small, repeatable actions. And often, it begins with the body. There's a reason the Stoics trained physically as well as mentally. They understood something most people overlook, that discipline in the body creates discipline in the mind. When you train, you're not just building strength or improving your health. You're reshaping your relationship with effort. You're teaching yourself to show up when you don't feel like it. You're learning to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. You're training your mind to keep going, even without immediate reward. And that's not vanity, that's inner development. But let's be honest, the beginning is uncomfortable. Silence feels unnatural. Routine feels restrictive. Everything in you will want to break it. You'll feel the urge to prove yourself, to show others that you're making progress, to seek validation for your effort. And that's where most people fall into the trap. Because the moment you shift your focus outward, seeking approval instead of building discipline, you lose the very thing you were trying to create. Carl Jung once said that clarity comes when you look within. And that's exactly what silence forces you to do. When you remove the noise, the distractions, the constant need to perform, you're left with yourself. No filters. No escape. And that's where transformation begins. Because the longer you stay in that space, the more your mind adapts. At first, you crave the noise. You feel restless. You want stimulation. But slowly, something changes. The urgency fades. The need for attention weakens. And in its place, a different kind of presence begins to form. Quiet, focused, grounded. You begin to make decisions that align with who you truly want to become, not based on what others expect, but based on what you know is right for you. You stop explaining yourself to people who never took the time to understand you. You stop performing for an audience that was never truly watching. You simply walk your path. And if you've ever noticed, the people who carry the most presence in a room are often the quietest ones. It's not about charisma. It's not about speaking louder. It's about coherence. Their thoughts, actions, and values are aligned. They are not scattered. They are not performing. They've done the internal work, and it shows. They've chosen silence not as avoidance, but as refinement, as control. Socrates once said that real change comes from focusing your energy on building the new, not fighting the old. And silence creates the space for that to happen. It allows you to stop reacting to what no longer serves you, and start building what truly matters. And over time, something remarkable happens. Your consistency, quiet, steady, unnoticed, becomes impossible to ignore. But here's the shift. By the time others begin to notice, it no longer matters to you. Because you're no longer driven by recognition. You're driven by something deeper, internal reward. You feel the peace. You feel the strength. You feel the clarity. And that becomes enough. Because what you built wasn't given to you by the world. It wasn't dependent on attention or approval. It was earned. Through discipline. Through repetition. Through silence. And no one can take that away from you. In the end, real transformation doesn't look dramatic. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's steady. It's grounded. It's deliberate. Built slowly, from the inside out. Silence is not weakness. It is where real strength begins. It's in those quiet moments, when no one is watching, when no one is applauding, that you shape the person you are becoming. So you don't need to announce every step. You just need to keep taking them. Keep showing up. Because when the time is right, the results will speak for you.